Lady Scifi stood atop the highest dais of the grand aerial arena, her silk gown rippling in the gentle wind that blew through the vast Colosseum. From below, thousands of spectators, nobles, commoners, and foreign travelers alike, filled every tier, their eyes fixed on her and her legendary champion, Gorlan the Unbreakable. Gorlan was a towering figure in gleaming armor, his broad shoulders and calm gaze inspiring confidence in all who witnessed his victories. Since childhood, Scifi had presided over duels in this floating fortress above the city of Aloria. The arena was built from white stone and upheld by anti-gravity pillars, drifting serenely above the silver sea. Each duel served to settle feuds and win alliances. None, however, had ever dared to challenge Gorlan until this day. Word of a human. Champion had reached Rayla only a fortnight earlier. Captain Elias Hart, a veteran of the distant Star Republic, had requested a sanctioned duel. Humans were known across the galaxy for their courage and unorthodox tactics, but none had ever bested Rayla's finest warriors. Whispers spread through court circles. Was this a diplomatic stunt? Or an act of defiance? Elias arrived aboard his sleek frigate, the Resolute, escorted by a small flotilla of human ships. He stepped onto the arena floor in simple leather armor, his sword and shield at his side. His dark hair was tied back, revealing a calm, determined expression. Where Raylan champions wore elaborate helmets and visored masks, Elias faced his opponent openly, his eyes steady on Gorlan. Lady Scifi welcomed him with formal courtesy, cloaked in the dignity of her title. "Captain Hart," she said, voice clear over the arena's speakers. "You have come far to seek this trial. Know that you face the mightiest warrior in our realm." Elias inclined his head. "I honor your champion and your customs, your ladyship. I accept the challenge." As the sun broke through drifting clouds, the duel began. Gorlan moved first, his gait deliberate and powerful. He struck with a broadsword, the blade humming as it sliced through the air. Elias parried, his shield ringing, then stepped inside Gorlan's guard. The crowd gasped as the two blades met with thunderous force. For several minutes the contest remained even. Gorlan's disciplined stance against Elias's fluid footwork, each finding and blocking blows without giving ground. Scifi's heart pounded as she watched her champion refuse to yield. Then, in a moment that stunned every soul present, Elias feigned a high strike. Gorlan raised his sword to block, but Elias twisted at the last instant, stepping close and sweeping his shield to unbalance the giant knight. Before Gorlan could recover, Elias drove his sword forward. The blade met a gap in the chamber of Gorlan's armor. Time seemed to slow as the crowd watched the steel slide between plates and then saw the unthinkable. With a single decisive motion born of precision and force, Elias split Gorlan from chest to waist. The knight staggered, eyes wide, with shock. A hush fell over the arena as Gorlan's upper body crumpled and his lower half collapsed beneath him. Blood blossomed across his breastplate, the dark stain spreading like ink on parchment. Lady Scifi's breath caught in her throat. The champion she had raised from boyhood lay broken. Even the distant sound of crashing waves below the arena seemed to fade away. For a heartbeat the world held its breath. Then, by ancient decree known as the Treaty of Conquest, the law enacted long ago to deter treachery, the victor gained possession not only of the fallen champion's lands but also of the person of the defeated's liege. In a single mortal stroke, Elias had claimed Scifi and her retinue. Silence gave way to awed murmurs and then to the roar of the crowd. Some cheered the human's victory, others wept for Gorlan's valor, and a few nobles muttered fears for their own titles. But none dared challenge the ancient treaty. Scifi arose, regal even in her shock, and met Elias's eyes. Though her world had shifted beneath her, she bowed with the grace that had earned her people's admiration. "Captain Hart," she said, voice steady despite her grief, "I bow to your victory and to the laws of our world." Elias knelt before her, sword pointed into the earth. "Lady Scifi, I hold you in highest respect. I will honor our customs, in the spirit of fairness." Two human guards strode forward, flanking him. Silently, they offered their arms to Scifi and her 8 handmaidens, who had accompanied her to witness the duel. Each woman wore fine attire and jeweled circlets, marking their station. Now they stood uncertain but determined, ready to follow Scifi's lead in whatever fate lay ahead. As they descended the dais, the floating arena's lights dimmed in mourning. On the ground below, banners of both Earth and Rayla fluttered, side by side. The scene was surreal, grief and triumph intertwined. Scifi's gaze never left Elias's face. Though circumstances had turned them from ruler and guest into captor and captives, something in his expression, a mixture of regret and resolve, offered a glimmer of hope. Behind them, Gorlan's body was carried away by the Order of the Silver. Hand, the knight sworn to Rayla's defense. Scifi watched until the bearers vanished through the ceremonial gates. Turning to her handmaidens, she raised her chin and gave a single nod. No tear fell, but a promise was made. She would honor her people's laws, learn her new role, and seek the moment when justice and mercy could be restored. High above, the arena drifted over the silver sea, its stones bathed in golden sunset. Below, a new chapter had begun, one born of steel and law, of sorrow and unspoken possibility. And at its heart stood 2 figures, bound together by legend. The fallen queen of Rayla and the human who had split her champion in half. Captain. Elias Hart stood on the polished deck of the Resolute, gazing out at the floating spires of Aloria. Below him, the silver sea reflected the golden light of the setting sun. He turned as 2 human guards approached, each bearing an ornate, cushioned chair. In their seats would sit the one-time queen of Rayla, Lady Scifi, and her 8 handmaidens. The captain felt a weight in his chest. The ancient treaty of conquest was clear. He had won the right to claim Scifi and her retinue. Yet the law did not say how to treat them afterward. Elias did not wish to humiliate noble women. His moral code forbade cruelty for sport. Still, he had duties as an officer of the Human Star Republic. Scifi entered the chamber, head held high beneath her silver circlet. She wore a gown of deep blue, simple yet elegant, and walked with measured grace. Behind her the handmaidens followed in matching attire. Each woman's eyes held a different emotion: anger, fear, curiosity. They murmured quietly among themselves as the guards guided them to their chairs. The chamber was spacious and refined. Hollow screens along one wall showed star charts and Raylan topography. Soft lighting fell on polished marble and warm wood paneling. A gentle hum came from the ship's engines. This was not a prison, but neither was it a royal court. It floated somewhere between respect and restraint. Scifi's gaze swept the room before settling on Elias. She inclined her head once as if offering silent acknowledgement. The handmaidens mirrored her gesture. Some kept their hands folded demurely in their laps. Others let their fingers fidget at their robes. Elias stepped forward and spoke without ceremony. "Lady Scifi," he said, voice calm, "I wish you no harm. Under our customs, you and your companions shall be treated with courtesy. You may remain together with privacy and provisions. Yet I must also maintain order aboard this vessel." Scifi's lips curved in a faint, appreciative smile. "Captain Hart, your words honor me. I will comply with your rules as I must by ancient law. But I ask only that you show us the same dignity you expect from us." The captain motioned to a nearby steward. "Provide them with quarters in the forward wing. Let no soldier enter without my order. Bring any requests directly to me." As the handmaidens were escorted away, Scifi lingered. "I understand you value knowledge of Rayla's politics," she said, stepping forward. "I can advise you on noble houses, rival factions, and rebel movements. In return, perhaps you will grant me small freedoms: movement on deck under guard, access to communication logs." Elias studied her. He knew the value of local intel. If he learned too little, he risked alienating the very people whose goodwill he needed. He nodded slowly. "I accept your offer. I will grant reasonable access, but I must verify your information." Scifi inclined her head. "Of course. I serve at your pleasure, and for the good of my people." With that understanding, she allowed herself to be led away. Elias watched her tall figure recede down the corridor. He felt the shift, from captive to counsel. Moments later, his second officer, Lieutenant Kara Voss, entered the bridge. Her brow was furrowed. "Captain, we have a situation. The intelligence sensor team intercepted a coded message from Rayla. It appears to come from a rebel cell in Aloria. They want to free Cerithia and her handmaidens." Elias frowned. "What are their demands?" "Secure evacuation of Cerithia and her maids to a designated landing site. They promise no violence if we comply. If we refuse, they threaten to sabotage our supply lines in orbit." He rubbed his temple. Rebels hungered for freedom, yet the Treaty of Conquest made Cerithia technically his prize. If he allowed a rescue, he would violate treaty law and risk a court-martial. If he refused, he would betray allies on the ground and likely spark bloodshed. "Prepare the comm array," Elias ordered. "I will speak with Lady Cerithia." He led Lieutenant Voss and a small security detail back to the forward hard wing. The corridor walls glowed softly under the hollow illumination. Around him, soldiers and officers paused to watch the procession, some with sympathy, others with curiosity. At the entrance to Cerithia's quarters, the chief steward bowed. "Captain, Lady Cerithia awaits." Elias entered. Cerithia sat at a low table, examining a holomap of the city below. The handmaidens were gathered quietly, each lost in her own thoughts. Two women stood by a window watching the stars. At the sight of Elias, Cerithia rose. "Captain Hart," she said. Her voice was steady, though her eyes betrayed concern. "I understand there is talk of rescue. The people of Rayla yearn for liberation, as I do, but they also trust in my word. I cannot ask you to break the treaty, yet I cannot remain a pawn of conquest." Elias set the comm device on the table. "The rebels demand your release. They have threatened to target our supplies, putting this entire mission at risk. If you agree to their plan, you may coordinate with them. If not, we hold you here and reinforce security." Cerithia studied him. Then she turned to her handmaidens. One by one they stepped forward. Some voiced fear of violence. Others spoke of loyalty to Cerithia's cause. At last, the youngest maid spoke quietly. "My lady, we cannot stay confined. Our people suffer. You must decide." Cerithia took a deep breath. Her mind raced through the possibilities: honor, duty, mercy, and justice. Finally she spoke, voice clear and resolute. "I will not force the humans to break their own laws. Instead, I offer you a pact." She looked at Elias. "If you grant me access to your ship's shuttle and allow a small guarded party to travel to the royal palace, I can negotiate a truce. The rebels will stand down if I secure an audience with the regent." Lieutenant Voss exchanged a glance with Elias. "That could work. It limits our liability and gives us plausible deniability." Elias nodded. "Very well. Cerithia, I will. Provide one shuttle under escort of 2 guards. You may go to the palace, but you must return by dawn, or I will bring you back by force." Cerithia inclined her head in gratitude. "Thank you, Captain. I will not fail you." As preparations began, the handmaidens gathered around Cerithia, murmuring encouragement. In that moment, a fragile alliance formed, one born of necessity and tempered by respect. In the silent confines of the Resolute, the former queen and the human captain found common ground. Outside, stars glimmered like distant promises. Below, the floating arena drifted above Rayla's seas, its stones still haunted by the memory of Gorlan. Soon, a new journey would begin, a journey of diplomacy, daring, and hope. And at its heart stood 2 leaders, bound by law and circumstance, striving for a future neither could achieve alone. Captain Elias Hart sat at the circular conference table aboard the Resolute, the soft hum of the ship's engines a constant backdrop. Around him were his senior officers, Lieutenant Kara Voss, the ship's chief strategist Malik Reyes, and communications officer Serena Cho. Beside Elias, on a smaller seat, sat Lady Cerethia, her posture straight and attentive, with 3 of her handmaidens standing nearby. Holographic displays flickered overhead, showing the surface of Rayla and the floating city of Aloria. Elias tapped a control panel, and the main holomap shifted to highlight noble districts, rebel strongholds, and trade routes. "We must decide our next steps," he said. "Cerethia, you offered to help me understand the local factions. Please share what you know." Cerethia leaned forward. "The House of Valora holds the palace now under Regent Maliver. They favor strict rule and fear any human influence. They will resist change. The House of Dreshen leads the merchant guilds. They want new trade partners but distrust us as invaders. Then there are the Iron Shields, noble knights loyal to old traditions. They see both humans and rebels as threats." Malik Reyes interjected. "What about the rebels? Are they organized enough to oust the Valora regent?" Cerethia nodded. "Yes, but they lack a single leader. They hold sway in the lower districts where commoners and craftsmen live. They believe in fair rule. If they unite under a banner, they could force a new council. But they need support and clear direction." Lieutenant Voss exchanged a glance with Elias. "If we back the rebels openly, we break our neutrality. If we side with the regent, we lose popular support. Both options carry risk." Cerethia met Elias's eyes. "What if we form an interim government? Include moderate nobles, merchants, commoners, and a human envoy. That would show unity and bring stability until elections can be held." Elias considered the idea. "Your proposal is bold. It could win over the commoners and merchants and isolate the hardliners. But the Valora regent will see it as a direct challenge to his power." "We can offer him a seat at the table," Cerethia replied. "Power shared is less likely to be contested. We can promise him influence in foreign affairs and guarantee his security." Reyes tapped his datapad. "I can draft an outline for an interim council. We would need to secure the palace, invite members, and hold public forums. We should move quickly before Valora rallies the Iron Shields." Cerethia's handmaidens exchanged looks. One stepped forward. "My lady, there is another concern. We have intercepted whispers among certain human officers who believe the Treaty of Conquest still demands we be kept in simple servitude. They speak of using our knowledge to grant Earth access to Rayla's mineral resources. That could spark outrage." Elias's brow tightened. "Who is spreading these ideas?" The maid hesitated. "A small group in the security division. They have influence with Lieutenant Farron. They plan to present a report pushing for stronger human control. They may reach Admiral Roth once official channels move." "I will handle that," Elias said firmly. "Lieutenant Voss, I want you to monitor security communications. If anyone makes moves toward exploitation, stop them. No one acts without my order." Voss nodded. "Understood, Captain." United by vision and bound by honor, their next steps would decide not just the fate of Rayla, but the future of interspecies cooperation in a galaxy still learning to trust. Dawn broke over. Aloria in pale gold as word of human intentions spread through the floating city. Rumors of secret resource deals and whispered betrayals reached the ears of commoners in crowded markets and narrow alleys. Citizens who once cheered at the sight of the human frigate now scowled at its hull glimmering overhead. Soon, small protests erupted in the lower districts, chants for freedom and cries against foreign rule. Lady Cerethia learned of these stirrings in the dim light of her private quarters aboard the Resolute. She sat at a low table studying messages delivered by her handmaidens. "They call us traitors," one maid said in a hushed voice. "They believe we serve the humans, not our own people." Cerethia's brow furrowed. She felt the weight of her decision pressing on her heart. To restore order, she needed to show her people that she remained their champion, not the human's pawn. That afternoon, Cerethia stood on a makeshift stage in the heart of a rebel gathering. Around her, craftsmen, dock workers, and humble merchants crowded in a half-ruined plaza. She raised hidden docks, human shuttles descended, lowering marines in precise formations. The Marines formed a line at the edge of the plaza, weapons lowered but ready. Word spread that the humans would not tolerate a massacre. Inside the palace, Scifi and her handmaidens readied themselves. Garbed in simple tunics beneath their silken robes, they carried small weapons only for protection. The hidden passages led them to a postern door at the base of the grand throne room. The lock clicked open under the skillful hands of a maid who had once served as a palace ward. Outside, they heard the distant clash of armor and the murmur of raised voices. As the Marines held the plaza, rebel forces moved in from behind the palace. Dock workers and artisans had donned loose uniforms to mark themselves as allies, carrying makeshift pikes and slings. They pressed past the city gates, now manned by hesitant guards. Many soldiers laid down their swords, unwilling to fire on citizens protected by humans. A tense silence fell, broken only by the rebels' calls for freedom and end the old rule. At midnight, the coordinated assault began. From the city side, rebels flooded the grounds, while from within, Scifi and her handmaidens emerged into the vast empty hall. They found the regent's personal guard arrayed in formation near the throne. The handmaidens stepped forward, weapons raised. "By order of Lady Scifi," one maid declared, "stand down and surrender your posts." The guards hesitated, caught between duty and the sight of the human flag flying in the sky above. In the plaza, Elias watched through a hololink. He saw rebels seizing the palace gates, shields clashing with swords, but no blood spilled. He heard the shouts of triumph as guards threw down arms. "It is working," he whispered, relief flooding him. Back in the throne room, Scifi confronted her former peers. Regent Maliver stood tall, but his face was ashen. He held no weapon. Behind him, the nobles who had once sneered at Scifi now looked on with shock. "You have broken the law," Maliver said, voice trembling. "You lead an army of commoners and outsiders." Scifi advanced, head held high. "I uphold the true law, the law of the people. You betrayed our trust. Your rule ends tonight." The nobles murmured, some dropping to their knees. The higher guards saluted Scifi, recognizing her as the rightful leader. In that monumental moment, the floating palace fell silent. The handmaiden, Essie, stood shoulder to shoulder with rebel captains, forming a living line that protected Scifi's back. Outside, the first rays of the new dawn began to filter through high windows. Elias's Marines secured the palace steps, ensuring no outside force could interrupt. He contacted Scifi through the hololink. "It's done," he said simply. Scifi allowed herself a small smile. "Thank you, Captain. You have given my people hope." She turned to Maliver. "You and your loyal houses will face a council to decide your fate, but you will receive fair hearing." With those words, the city of Aloria took its first steps toward a new future. The spark of rebellion had burst into a flame of freedom, fueled by unity between human and Raylan. As dawn light suffused the great hall, Scifi and her allies prepared to forge a lasting peace from the ashes of old rule. The dawn sun cast pale light over the grand aerial arena as human Marines and Raylan rebels gathered on its broad platform. Lady Scifi stood at the center, clad in light armor and flanked by her 8 handmaidens. Far below, the silver sea reflected the arena's shadow, and distant city bells tolled the hour of reckoning. Today they would strike the final blow against the old regime and free Rayla once and for all. Scifi raised her sword, its blade catching the morning glow. "Remember," she called in a clear voice, "we fight for justice and unity, not for vengeance. Show them the strength of our resolve." Around her, the handmaidens whispered a pledge of loyalty and hope. Some clutched small daggers. Others carried compact crossbows. All bore expressions of determination. At the arena's northern end stood the Iron Shields, elite Raylan knights still loyal to Regent Maliver's counsel. Their leader, General Hadron, donned black plate and bore an ornate shield etched with the old crest. His stance was firm, unbowed by recent defeats. Across the field, Elias Hart marshaled his human Marines into formation, their rifles slung at their backs, swords and combat knives at the ready. Elias stepped forward, meeting Sarithia's gaze. "We disable their defenses," he said quietly. "Then you and your handmaidens can secure the control nodes. I will lead the Marines against General Hadron's guard." Sarithia nodded. "May, our actions speak of honor." At her signal, 2 of her maids slipped along the arena's edge toward the defense console. The console controlled the arena's anti-gravity shields and automated turrets. The other 6 scouts melted into the shadows, preparing to flank the iron shields. Elias raised his hand, and the Marines advanced in disciplined ranks. A sudden blast of energy crackled as the shields hummed to life around the perimeter. From hidden turrets, staccato bolts of light arced toward the rebels. Elias gave the word, and the Marines crouched, returning fire with non-lethal stun rounds that clipped metal and stone but did not maim. The crack of rifles echoed through the arena, mingling with the whistles of charged defenses. Under cover of the Marines' advance, Sarithia's handmaidens reached the console. One knelt and worked a series of deft strokes on the control panel. Sparks flew as wires were severed and data cores removed. A low groan of power down rippled through the structure. The shields flickered, then collapsed, leaving the entire arena open. At that moment, Sarithia strode forward, rallying the rebels. She raised her blade, and a cheer rose from the assembled commoners and merchants who had joined the fight. The iron shields, deprived of their defensive advantage, formed a tight square and advanced. Elias signaled his Marines to hold as General Hadron led his guard into combat. The sound of clashing swords and shields rang out. The human Marines joined the fray with precise strikes targeting the knees and shoulders of the knights to disarm without fatal harm. Rebels surged from the side, outnumbering the guard. In the center of the battlefield, Elias faced General Hadron. The 2 circled one another, blades raised. Hadron's style was formal and powerful. Each swing carried the weight of noble tradition. Elias moved with fluid grace, deflecting blows and seeking openings. Sparks flew as steel met steel. Hadron lunged and Elias sprang aside, slashing at the general's thigh guard. The blow rang sharp but did not break bone. Blood welled from a shallow cut. Hadron grunted and countered with a vertical strike aimed at Elias's shoulder. Elias blocked and kicked, sending the general off balance. Momentarily unsteady, Hadron stumbled. Elias seized the chance and delivered a non-lethal thrust that disarmed his opponent, sending the sword spinning across the arena floor. Hadron dropped to one knee, acknowledging defeat. Elias backed away and offered his hand, which Hadron accepted, in silent accord. Across the field, the remaining iron shields laid down their weapons, their banners falling to the ground. Sarithia advanced to Hadron's side and addressed the assembled fighters. "No more blood need be shed," she called. "Let this day mark the end of old tyranny. Today we build our future on justice, not fear." A tide of cheers and relieved sobs answered her. Rebels embraced former guards. Human Marines sheathed their rifles. The arena, once a place of ritual blood sport, now hosted an unprecedented union of former foes. Elias approached Sarithia as she surveyed the scene. "Your courage inspired them," he said. "You honor Rayla and the galaxy." Sarithia smiled, though weariness touched her eyes. "And you showed us how to fight with mercy. Without your help, I could not have done this." Nearby, her handmaidens secured the final control nodes. They activated the arena's holocomms, broadcasting live to every corner of Aloria and beyond. The image of Sarithia and Elias standing together filled holoscreens in taverns, marketplaces, and even aboard orbiting ships. "By the power vested in me as captain of the Resolute and lady of Rayla's people," Elias declared, "I hereby nullify the ancient treaty of conquest. From this moment, no human law or alien decree may claim another's freedom as prize of war." Sarithia added, her voice firm, "And I, in my capacity as High Consul of the Interim Council, renounce all claims of noble privilege that divide our people. We stand as equals, united in hope." Applause and cheers thundered through the arena. A lone Raylan priest stepped forward, raising a staff topped with twin symbols of Earth and Rayla. "Let this be our covenant," he intoned. "That peace shall guide our alliance and mercy temper our justice." As the sun climbed higher, the arena filled with celebration. Rebels danced with guards. Citizens streamed through the entry gates, greeted by human marines who offered water and medkits. Cerethia's handmaidens distributed fresh bread baked by grateful craftsmen. Elias stood at the edge, watching the transformation of fear into festivity. In that moment, the floating arena above the Silver Sea, once a relic of contest and conquest, became a beacon of unity. The human who had split the greatest champion in half now stood shoulder to shoulder with the fallen queen and her allies, forging a future built on honor, compassion, and shared purpose. And as the first banners of the new council were raised high, two figures, Cerethia and Elias, looked toward the horizon, ready to write the next chapter of their joint destiny. Morning mist drifted over Eloria's spired rooftops as Lady Cerethia and Captain Elias Hart convened the first meeting of the interim council in the grand aerial arena. Long wooden benches formed a circle around a polished stone table. Cerethia stood at one end, Elias at the other. Between them sat nobles, merchants, commoners, and two human envoys. The 8 handmaidens, now acting as Cerethia's advisors, took their places beside her. Cerethia raised her hand. "Friends of Rayla and Earth," she began in her clear, steady voice, "we gather not as victors and vanquished, but as equals. Our task is to lay the groundwork for a fair and lasting government." A hush settled over the assembly. Let us speak, honestly, of our needs and hopes. First, the merchant Lord Dreshen spoke. He wore fine silks and carried a ledger of trade figures. "Our market suffered under old taxes," he said. "We ask for open trade with human worlds. We can supply Rayla's minerals in exchange for foodstuffs and technology." Murmurs of agreement rose from nearby traders. Next, a representative of the artisans, a woman named Kira, stood. "Commoners want schools and clean water," she said. "We need funds to repair canals and teach our children." She looked directly at Elias. "Your people have advanced medicine. Teach our healers, help us build clinics." Elias nodded. "Human engineers and medics will assist where they can. We seek partnership, not dominance." He tapped his datapad. "We can send engineers to survey water systems this week. Medical teams can train local staff immediately." A noble from House Valora shifted uneasily. He cleared his throat. "And what of security? Some fear lawlessness if the Iron Shields disband." He glanced at General Hadron, who sat quietly in plain armor. Hadron met his gaze coolly. "Cerethia," answered. "We will establish a joint defense council. Human Marines and Raylan guards will serve together to protect all citizens, under civilian oversight." She smiled at Hadron. "General, will you lead the Raylan contingent?" Hadron rose. "With honor." The council applauded. As discussions continued, the handmaidens exchanged notes on political alliances and local customs. One maid, Lyra, raised a point. "We must reform the courts. Justice cannot favor nobles over peasants." Cerethia added, "Agreed. We will draft a legal code that applies equally to all." Elias promised legal advisors to help translate human precedents into Raylan law. After 4 hours of debate, the council agreed on its first acts: free trade zones, public works projects, joint security forces, and a schedule for elections 6 months hence. Cerethia closed the meeting. "We have built strong foundations," she said. "Let us now turn words into action." Outside the arena, banners bearing twin symbols of Earth and Rayla fluttered in the breeze. Town criers announced the council's decisions to grateful crowds. In marketplaces, merchants prepared goods for human ships. In the palace, artisans sketched plans for new schools and clinics. Across Eloria, a sense of optimism spread like sunlight breaking through clouds. That evening, Cerethia invited Elias and his senior officers to a banquet in the Crystal Hall. Long tables groaned under platters of roasted meats, exotic fruits, and pastries drizzled with honey. Glass goblets of spiced wine and sweet nectar sparkled. Music drifted from the far corner, where a Raylan bard played a stringed cithara. Seated beside Elias, Cerethia raised her goblet. "To our new alliance," she toasted. Elias smiled and drank. "To unity and peace." Around them, Handmaidens laughed and conversed with human officers. Bonds of friendship were forming over shared stories and laughter. Later, as lanterns burned low, Elias and Cerethia walked along a balcony that overlooked the arena's edge. Below them, the silver sea reflected starlight. A gentle breeze carried the sound of the bard's final chords. "You have done more than I imagined," Elias said softly. "You turned a duel into a movement for freedom." Cerethia leaned on the railing. "I only did what any leader should, listen to her people's heart." She paused. "And you taught me another lesson, that mercy can be stronger than steel." Elias looked into her eyes. "Together we make a better world." He offered his arm. She took it, and they strolled under the twin moons of Rayla. In the days that followed, human engineers mapped water channels while Raylan workers repaired locks and gates. Medical teams set up clinics in lower districts, treating simple ailments and training Raylan healers. Joint patrols of Marines and guards maintained peace as merchants and artisans rebuilt streets and shops. The handmaidens assumed new roles, guiding delegations, teaching Raylan etiquette to human officers, and coordinating public hearings. One maid, Laria, became a liaison with the rebel council, ensuring that former dissidents had seats in the provisional government. Another, Myron, organized cultural exchanges, arranging performances of human music and Raylan dance in the palace gardens. Meanwhile, rumors of other world systems challenged by oppression reached the Resolute. Elias received dispatches asking for guidance. Cerethia studied them. "We could share our model," she said. "Show the galaxy what humans and Raylans achieved here." Elias nodded. "A federation of free worlds." For now, Rayla's future shone brightly. The floating city hummed with constructive energy rather than martial drills. Markets thrived, schools welcomed children, and ships from Earth and beyond docked to trade and learn. In the heart of the arena, banners of unity flew where once blood had been spilled. As the first moon rose high, Lady Cerethia and Captain Elias returned to the council chambers to begin drafting the permanent constitution. Their partnership, born of conquest and conflict, had blossomed into a shared vision. Under twin suns and twin moons, they laid the bricks of a new order, one built on justice, compassion, and hope for all. Months later, the grand aerial arena stood transformed. Where once battles had been fought, now gardens bloomed and raised. Planters and market stalls displayed crafts from both Rayla and Earth. The air was filled with music. A Raylan harpist plucked soft melodies while human flutes added gentle harmony. Twin banners, one bearing Cerethia's silver circlet, the other Earth's star emblem, fluttered side by side over the main gate. Lady Cerethia, now High Consul of the Unified Council, walked the pathways with Captain Elias Hart at her side. 8 handmaidens, each in resplendent robes that blended Raylan silks with human fabrics, moved among the crowd, greeting visitors, sharing smiles, and offering assistance. Cerethia paused beneath a flowering arch and looked out over the festival. "Look, how they celebrate together," she said, her voice soft with wonder. "I never dreamed I would see Raylans and humans dancing to the same song." Elias smiled, watching 2 children, one Raylan, one human, twirl by, their laughter echoing in the morning light. "Your vision made this possible," he said. "You led your people with courage and warmth." Cerethia nodded. "And you stood by me when it mattered most." She turned to Elias. "Thank you, my friend." Elias inclined his head. "We are more than friends now. We are partners in destiny." As they walked, Cerethia's handmaidens approached, each carrying a small wooden box. They presented the boxes to her, one by one. Inside were tokens, a carved Raylan stone shaped like a wave, a delicate human-crafted silver pendant inscribed with Cerethia's crest, a set of pressed flowers from Earth, and more. Each gift symbolized the bond between worlds. Cerethia's eyes glowed with gratitude as she accepted them. Nearby, General Hadron and a human commander oversaw the placement of a new monument at the arena's center. The statue depicted Cerethia, and Elias standing side by side, swords lowered, gazing outward with hope. Beneath the figures an inscription read, "To honor and unity, may strength serve peace." At the appointed hour, Cerethia and Elias climbed the steps to the statue's dais. A hush fell over the assembly of council members, citizens, and visiting dignitaries. Cerethia raised her hand for silence. "Today we mark the beginning of our shared future," she announced. "This monument stands for our unity, our courage, and our compassion. Let it remind us that strength without mercy is hollow and that mercy without strength may fail. Together we build a legacy that honors both our peoples." Elias stepped forward and laid a wreath of white lilies at the statue's base. "On behalf of Earth," he said, "I pledge continued friendship, cooperation, and respect. May this alliance shine as a beacon for all who seek peace." Applause rolled through the arena. From the crowd, Raylan children waved small Earth flags while human families lifted their little ones to see the statue. Musicians struck up a lively tune, and people joined hands dancing in circles around the dais. After the ceremony, Cerethia led Elias to a hall where artists had created a tapestry depicting the 7 days of their shared struggle. The duel in the arena, the council's founding, the uprising, the battle, the interim government, the rebuilding, and finally the festival itself. The tapestry glowed with vibrant threads of gold, silver, blue, and green. Cerethia gently ran her fingers over the final panel, where the two leaders stood under the twin moons. "This tells our story," she said. "Future generations will learn how unity overcame division." Elias studied the scene. "And they will know that humans are capable of honor beyond conquest." Cerethia smiled. "Yes. They will know that when two worlds come together, they can achieve greatness neither could reach alone." As evening approached, lanterns were lit, casting warm pools of light. Long tables bore feasts, roasted game from Rayla's forests, spiced breads from human homeworlds, fresh fruits, sweet pastries, and a cool blue beverage made from Raylan crystal berries. Cerethia and Elias sat at the head table, with handmaidens and council members around them. They raised goblets in a final toast. "To the future," Cerethia said. "May it be bright." "To friendship," Elias added. "May it endure." The guests echoed, "To the future." "To friendship." Laughter, clinking glasses, and music filled the night. Lantern-lit boats drifted beneath the arena, carrying couples and families on gentle tours of the silver sea below the floating city. Fireworks, bright streaks of teal, gold, and violet burst overhead, painting the sky with hope. Later, when the festival quieted, Cerethia and Elias stood once more beneath the statue. The cool night air carried the scent of flowers and salt. Cerethia looked up at the twin moons. "I feel at peace," she said. Elias nodded. "We have earned it." Cerethia placed her hand on Elias's arm. "Our journey continues," she whispered. "There will be challenges, other worlds, other conflicts, but we know the way now. Together." Elias gazed at the statue, then at Cerethia. "Wherever we go, we carry this moment with us." She smiled. "And the galaxy will remember how a human split a champion in two, and how that act led not to sorrow, but to the greatest alliance the stars have seen." Hand in hand they turned from the plaza, walking back toward the council chambers. Above them, the statue gleamed under starlight. Below, the floating city of Aloria pulsed with life and promise. Their legacy of honor and the hope it inspired would shine across the galaxy for generations to come.